Welcome to the pLimLab podcast. I'm your host, and today we're tackling a question that keeps finance executives awake at night. In 2025, the real-world asset tokenization market crossed $24 billion. That's billion, with a B. Franklin Templeton's tokenized money market fund. The one ticker symbol BENJI alone manages around $700 million in assets. BlackRock's BUIDL fund, barely 18 months old, is already handling more than $2 billion. These are staggering numbers. And yet, compared to the total addressable market, the roughly $16 trillion in global financial assets that theoretically could be tokenized, we've barely scratched the surface. We're at 0.15%, 1/15th of 1%. So here's the paradox. Every major institution has a tokenization strategy. Every regulator from MiCA to DORA is drafting frameworks. The technology works. And yet, nothing moves at scale. Why? Today we're going to unpack 3 hard truths that the tokenization industry doesn't talk about. And at the end, I'll tell you what pLimLab is building to solve the first real bottleneck. Part 1. The custody trap. Here's something you won't read in the Messari report. When BlackRock tokenizes a treasury bill, the token is legally just a receipt. The actual bill sits in a traditional custodian, typically Bank of New York Mellon or State Street. If that custodian fails, your token becomes worthless. So tokenization doesn't remove counterparty risk, it just adds a second counterparty, the smart contract. Now you have bank risk and contract risk. This is why institutional flows are stuck in money market funds. Money market funds are the single safest traditional asset on the planet. The custodian risk is negligible. The regulatory framework is 40 years old and battle-tested. Try to tokenize anything more complex, a real estate asset, a private credit loan, a trade finance invoice. And suddenly, the custody question becomes unsolvable. Who holds the deed? Who verifies the underlying borrower? Who liquidates on default? The answer today is lawyers, lots of them. And the cost of that legal architecture is roughly 3 to 5% of the asset value per year, eating any yield advantage tokenization provides. This is why, when you actually look at RWA issuance in 2025, 91% is government debt. It's the only asset class where custody is simple enough to make the math work. Part 2. The liquidity illusion. Tokenized does not mean liquid. This is the single most misunderstood concept in the space. BUIDL has $2 billion in assets. Its average daily on-chain trading volume, under 5 million. That's a 0.25% daily turnover. A traditional money market fund in a money center bank sees daily redemption flows 5 to 10 times higher. The reason is simple. Institutional buyers park capital, they don't trade it. And retail can't legally access most real-world assets due to accreditation rules. So you end up with a token that exists, but no market to exchange it against. Uniswap pools for tokenized treasuries have hilariously thin depth. Try to sell $1 million of OUSG on-chain, and you'll move the price 2 to 3% before you fill. That's a 300 basis point slippage on what is theoretically a cash-equivalent asset. So what is the tokenization actually buying you? It's buying you programmability, the ability to plug the asset into DeFi protocols, to compose, to automate. But for pure custody and settlement, the legacy rails are actually faster and cheaper for size. This is the second unspoken truth. Tokenization's value is not liquidity or efficiency. Its value is composability. And composability only pays off when you have a DeFi stack worth composing into. Part 3. The regulatory cliff. MiCA went live in January 2025. DORA is in full enforcement as of 2026. The AI Act starts biting in August. And the transfer of funds regulation, the travel rule, is mandatory across the European Union. Every single one of these regulations contains a provision that makes scaled tokenization painful. MiCA's rules on asset reference tokens require a segregated reserve, audited quarterly, with a public white paper. That's manageable for a stablecoin issuer, but devastating for an asset manager wanting to tokenize 1,000 different real-world assets. DORA extends critical third-party oversight to every technology provider in the chain. If you issue a tokenized fund, You now have to audit your chain's validator set, your RPC provider, your Oracle, all of them, as if they were bank infrastructure. Most Layer 2s don't meet the bar. The travel rule is even worse. It requires identity verification at every token transfer above €1,000. On a public blockchain where transfers happen in seconds, this is architecturally impossible without a KYC primitive baked into the protocol layer. And this, right here, is the bottleneck. This is what pLimLab is building. What we're building. At pLim, we're not issuing tokens. We're not building another tokenization platform. We're solving the layer below, the regulatory primitives that make compliant tokenization possible at scale. Specifically, we're building a substrate-based Layer 1 with 3 native palettes. A KYC palette that attests to identity state on-chain without leaking personal data. An RWA palette that handles asset custody metadata, transfer restrictions, and jurisdictional rules. And an Oracle palette that feeds regulatory-grade price and compliance data. What this gives an issuer is dramatic. Today, if you want to issue a compliant tokenized fund, you need to integrate with Chainalysis for transaction risk monitoring, integrate with a KYC provider per jurisdiction, build transfer restriction logic yourself, and maintain your own Oracle. That's 4 separate vendor contracts and a 6-month build. With pLim's stack, those 4 components are pre-wired. You issue the token, transfer restrictions, KYC at transfer, and Oracle pricing just work. Your legal cost drops from 3 to 5% of assets under management down to something measurable in basis points. This is not speculative. Our mainnet launched with spec version 3.01 in mid-April. We have 5 RWA issuers registered. KYC is wired through an attester network. The Explorer is public. You can verify this on chain.plimlab.ch. Closing. Tokenization is not going to grow from 24 billion to 16 trillion by building more tokens. It's going to grow by building the compliance primitives that make tokens actually usable at institutional scale. That's the game. That's where the value is. If you're a fund manager, a regulator, or a developer thinking about this space, come talk to us. The playbook is changing, and it's changing fast. This was the pLimLab podcast. I'm your host. We'll see you next week.